Hi everybody, welcome back, and if this is your first time, welcome. My name's Max Haddad, and today we're going to talk about something difficult. A man named Alek Minassian, involuntary celibate people, a tragedy, and how courts fail to recognize anything other than insanity and someone having total control. So the short story, and I'm going to try to remain as ungraphic as I can. A man named Alek Minassian stumbled onto a website and heard about another guy named Elliot who had committed murder. The basis for him deciding to commit murder was that he felt as though he was born behind the eight ball. He had a good family, but he felt unattractive. He was socially awkward, and he decided that because of his bad luck with women up to the age of, I don't know, probably early 20s, he would never be able to lose his virginity. And so he was involuntarily celibate, an incel. And the only way that he could get his ups, feel adequate, get his justice, get his revenge on a society that he felt had declined his offer to join them, that he had to kill. And that he wanted to kill, this is their lingo, not mine, Chads and Stacys. Chads being alpha males, men who could easily get women, and Stacys, desirable women, in a lot of cases just women in general. And he felt that anyone who had better luck than him with women was the enemy, and any woman who wasn't interested in him sexually, not just romantically, sexually, deserved to die. And he acted that out. Alek, years later, found record of this, not even years later, found record of this and decided that it was an actual uprising. It wasn't just an incident, it was a movement. And he wasn't the only one. There were plenty of people. Of course, it's a small percentage of the population, but there were certainly more than one young male who decided that this was a movement, that this was the beginning of the overtaking of the world, that the incels were going to rise up, suppress, potentially destroy all Chads, and force the Stacys to breed with them. It is crazy, right? That's not what the courts thought. I'm going to show you a clip of Alek and the head detective for the case. Alek took a van and hurt people with it. Again, I'm going to try to not get too graphic. Rob Thomas, the head detective, I think did an amazing job remaining compassionate, remaining dignified as he sat in the room with a serial killer, somebody who had killed multiple people. And he was respectful and he was careful. And I think he's a great example of police doing a superb job for their community. Because if he just ran in there and acted like an ass, we weren't going to get anywhere. We weren't going to learn about what motivated Alek to do this. So like I said, showing you the clip, I think it's crazy. I think it is literally insane.
Before we get started, I want you to know that we're being videotaped and audio taped.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Okay.
Do you know what I mean by that?
Yes, everything I say and do is being captured.
Exactly, yeah, on audio and video. Okay? Now, here's what I want to do, Alek. I want to talk to you. Okay? We're going to spend a good deal of time together. Okay?
Okay.
It's important that I talk to you. All right? I've done a little bit of reading, and I know a little bit about involuntary
Celibacy.
Celibacy, right? So being celibate, involuntarily
Yes.
celibate. What does that mean?
That means celibacy means someone who never before has a sexual intercourse.
Right.
Involuntary celibacy means this wasn't your choice.
I
You
see.
essentially are have been thrown into true forced loneliness, and you're unable to lose your virginity.
Right.
This is especially painful for young males.
Right. That makes sense. When did you first? Sorry, you mentioned this, and I forgot. When did you first go on?
2014.
2014, and specifically when in 2014?
May 23, 2014.
How were you able to remember that?
Because I remember that was a very significant day.
Okay, what was that?
That was when Elliot Rodger decided to essentially commit an uprising, a beta uprising, if you will,
right,
against the Chads and the Stacys. It was a beta uprising.
A beta uprising? Okay.
Although he didn't call it a beta uprising at the time. Someone else who was inspired by him by the name of Chris called it a beta uprising sometime in, actually I believe it was October 1, 2015.
It was Elliot Rodger who was the father of
basically the founding forefather of the entire movement.
Right. So explain to me this movement. What's this movement about?
It's basically a movement of angry incels such as myself who are unable to get laid. Therefore, we want to overthrow the Chads,
mm-hmm.
which would force the Stacys to be forced to reproduce with the incels.
Right. Okay. When you say incels,
he's awkward. I would love to sit here and just not be a bully, but I have to be. He's awkward. He's weird. And it's not because he comes from a foreign family or something like that. I know there's going to be people in the comments jumping to that conclusion, as there always are, but that's not why. He's weird. He's the kid that you go to high school with that he wears the military jacket. And you're like, was your dad in the military? No, he's like the dork that doesn't even have dork friends. And that's bad. I don't like that culture, the cliquey bullying culture. I don't like that. But if I subscribed to it, that's the group that he would be in. The group of loners, the people that don't have a group, because they don't fit in. And when you're talking to them, they stand 2 feet too close. Maybe they didn't brush their teeth and they're weird. I was almost that kid, but I'm not going to sit here and pretend I was. My point is, even if his family knocked it out of the park, and let's say he wasn't, he couldn't be diagnosed with schizophrenia or OCD or, tremendously awful bipolar. He was clearly emotionally and mentally dysfunct by the time he decided to commit that atrocity. And when he went to court, and hear me, I am not pleading for leniency for murderers. That's not it. I'm just using this extreme example to point out an issue with the American judicial system, possibly other countries. I don't know. I've never been there. I've only been arrested here. It wasn't great. Before I go there, I have bipolar. It's totally under control, has been for a minute, but before I committed the crime that sent me to prison, it was not. I think that I understood what good and evil was, right and wrong. Now, despite that, I know when I committed my crime, I couldn't take full responsibility for it. I wasn't completely out of control, but I was obsessed with robbing a pharmacy. And that's inevitably why it happened. I think a lot of times when you go to court, sorry, there's somebody mowing a lawn outside, it's loud. When you go to court, you are either sociopathic, a babbling madman, or completely competent. I wasn't a babbling madman, but no, I wasn't completely competent. Now, I think the way that I was sentenced, the time that I served in prison and in work release and jail and all that, I think it was fair. So I'm not saying in my case it should have been different, but when somebody who has gone so far into the deep end decides that because by the age of 25, he hasn't lost his virginity, that he needs to kill people, that's the only way that he can equal out the scales of justice, diagnosable or not, that person is insane. So I know that the reason that our courts, at least, U.S. courts, do this, that they don't delineate very well, it's black and white, there's no gray, is because they're streamlining justice. There's so many people being arrested for so many different things every day. If they look at every individual that's had a rough childhood or an awful childhood, or like flunked out of college, whatever it is, small, huge trauma, if they look at every case subjectively and individually, they will be so bogged down that they'll never get anything done. It's streamlined. They're trying to get people in and out of court as quick as they can. If they're going to be sentenced to prison, let's sentence them to prison. If they're going to be let off scot-free, go ahead. So the argument I'm making today is not that Alek Minassian should have been found insane and given a more lenient sentence, or a sentence that was more focused on rehabilitation for his psychological issue, again, diagnosable or not, but that justice should never be streamlined. That if courts are in a position where they have to streamline justice to get anything done, they're clearly undermanned. They need help. I don't know why. Something's getting in the way of them viewing each case individually. I think it's easy to feel grateful that courts are deliberate and judges are quick to decide how they'll be judging someone until you're the person in the courtroom. And when you're the person in the courtroom and you get sentenced to something that isn't going to help you, what then? It's somebody else. It's easy to feel good about our courts doing it as quickly as they can, making a rash decision, whatever it is, until you're the family that suffers because someone who could have been helped 10 years ago was simply punished, and they got out and did the same thing again. Now, I'm not saying that punishment has no place in a mentally dysfunct person's sentence. Punishment was certainly part of my sentence. Rehabilitation was a very small piece, and most of it was on my end. I decided that that's what I wanted. But I'm not saying that if somebody is not diagnosable, but clearly incapable of making good decisions or even decent decisions, that they should be coddled and sent to 10 therapists and 25 mandatory hugs from a guard every day. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying how we are resolving crimes from the smallest to the biggest is not working. When Alek Minassian went to court, the judge decided that because he could tell them what right and wrong was, he was capable, he was competent. Sociopaths can tell you what right and wrong is. That's how they manipulate people. They know how to get an edge over others. Just because, and this is the case with plenty of stuff, just because you know what right and wrong is doesn't mean you feel what right and wrong is. It doesn't mean that your conscience is active in the way that it needs to be to help you live a healthy life that doesn't hurt other people. It's like knowing that 3 pieces of cake is too much cake doesn't stop you from eating 3 pieces of cake. I'll speak for myself. Just because you can recite something doesn't mean that you really feel that you're living that way. This has been made a very silly example online. And I'm not mad at anybody for doing that. The idea that there are people so angry about being virgins at 25 that they're committing murder is absurd. I'm not laughing about it, but it is absurd. But I think, said it earlier, this extreme example can be used to serve a point, that it was absurd to the courts. And it was so absurd that they missed the obvious, that this person, for whatever reason, ended up acting like a lunatic, out of control, without agency to choose the right thing to do. Guess what, Alek? There are prostitutes. That's all. I'm just saying, like, if the issue was simply virginity drives 25-year-old males crazy, you can get some action for $10. It's gross. I'm not suggesting it. I'm just saying there's clearly more to it than that. And the people that are sitting in their black robes, getting paid an awful lot of money, are missing the obvious. I've not gone to legal school. I don't know shit. I shouldn't be able to watch 10 minutes of an interview with this murderer and know that he's crazy. You feel it in your gut. Not every awkward kid stays awkward and suffers for it their whole life. For sure, I was awkward as hell in 8th grade, and in 9th grade I learned that if I was outrageous, I at least got some positive attention, or what felt like positive attention. It wasn't a good coping mechanism. It wasn't a good personality trait, but that's what I went with. I was a terrified little kid, and I did what I could do to feel okay. But some people don't figure it out. Some people don't stumble into a coping mechanism like I did. They don't luck out that way. And they end up being the 30-year-old miserable loner who doesn't want to be alone. Alex says in that interview that he was forced into true loneliness. And it sounds an awful lot like if he had a choice in that, he wouldn't have chosen that loneliness. So even if he didn't mean to, that's an admission of helplessness. I'm not going to keep talking. I've already said too much. I didn't mean for this video to be such a rant, but not saying coddle the murderers. I'm just saying if we want to do a good job, we can't streamline justice. That's like the one thing that we can't expedite because it's more convenient. Take care of yourselves. Talk to you soon.